So I've been looking at YouTube video tutorials. The thing about them is they're kind of complex, and there's so many things they explain. Of course, I understand how these artists are working with the sort of proportions, the correct ones, and really the information is quite helpful. But let's simplify with something that I found the simplest, I guess, when it comes to explaining it to a novice. Here, I'm borrowing Betty Edwards' drawing on the right side of the brain, and particularly I have her workbook on this page. She is explaining how to draw self-portrait. So it's going to be at an angle. When you try to draw portraits, the easiest would be probably front facing. Your entire perception of the face kind of becomes different because you don't see the normal like face symmetrical forward looking look. Okay, so that's one of those difficulties that a new person would having trouble with. In her book with her students here, she tackled that problem. So there's a formulation for this, and with this particular proportions, when you're looking at person at view angle, it's slightly going to be tilted. So I'm just going to follow this formulation and try to draw myself as a demonstration. And then later on, also, I'll try to shade this. So you would need a bit of a strong light. So I'm just going to be, so I have this sort of thing. So I'm going to be looking there on this side, draw myself. So I'm looking at my screens. I can have a reference. So you're going to be doing this with a mirror, and we'll just analyze this with the red mark. Some things to keep note. So it's going to be with a triangle, an equilateral triangle, meaning the distance of this is equal to the distance of this vertical as opposed to side. So the head is going to be tilted slightly, and then the measurement of the eyes is going to be key. So this is the eye, and then it's going to be still one eye apart from the other eye. Things to notice later on is that the nose, okay, but then if we take a look first at this proportion from the ear level to the upper mouth level, it's going to be the same. So this is going to be, say, 1. And this line on the bottom part of this triangle is going to be the same thing. Here, this dimension, I'll call it B, is the same since to the top of the skull, because that's the correct proportion. So if from the chin to the eye level to your top of your skull is going to be the same. The hair, of course, is a bit thicker than the skull. So it's going to be a bit thicker when you're going to be drawing this. The back of your head is going to be just like one ear. One thing you would be struggling probably would be how to draw this side, because the shape of here is going to be a difficult thing to do, because you might always remember that you're used to usually drawing like a full face, most likely, as opposed to this side. It's a bit different again. We have to take note of these differences when we are going to be doing this. And then the hairline, going back here, is measured from the distance of the nose to that. Probably it's not all through, but this one's slightly bigger. Let's try out this formulation. So I'm going to be using the iPad Pro. I'm going to be looking at this angle, and instead I'm going to be drawing this the opposite way of the formulation. So it can work the same way. So I'm going to draw the guiding triangle. You can start out with the eye. So I'm going to be using the same eye length to have this kind of distance to my other eye, which is one eye apart. I'm going to draw that vertical extra line, which is one eye apart. Here, the same length. I'm going to be using my fingers to measure the same. That's the top of my skull. I'm going to look at the shape of my eyes rather than just think what it would look like. So halfway here is where my mouth is supposed to be. But the center of the mouth is somewhere here, the placement of this, because it's right here. And then the nose, it's going to be roughly here, this. So the nose is there. I have this fleshy thing. And the eyebrow is about one eye above my eye. It's a bit longer. My chin is going to be here. And then where my ear is supposed to be, it's here. Ear is all the way up here to the lips. Let's see if that works. So I'm just looking at the shape of my ears. The hair is my hairline. Okay, it's supposed to be here. So I'm adjusting. And then my jaw is going to be here. Eye, shape of the mouth is going to be right there. Shape. So I'm following the shape of what I see. My skull. And then the neck. Clothes are there. Top of my skull is there. So it's going to be slightly thicker here because of the hair. And I'm just going to look at these shapes in direction. Top of my head. Decipher where my hairline is going to be. It's going to be here, but I have hair coming down like that. My hairline is going like this. Shadowed areas on this part. So and then if I take a look at what, just going to be looking at my shape without the glasses. Okay. Then my neck is going to be like this. It's the color. My clothes. Here's that. And now I can start shading. Let's try to put in a value bar. Let's try to divide this into 4 equal parts. Okay, so the darkest dark is going to be here. So I'm using a 6B pencil. And then the lightest you can shade would be something like here. So the values between these two. So something, the next it would be something darker. And then a medium dark would be there. So this is one way of knowing if you're on using the correct values. So the lightest being that. So I'm going to, there's a 5th value, which is the whiteness of the paper. So you're going to be using the whiteness of the paper still. So now that I have done the outline of my self-portrait, I'm going to turn off one of the lights here. You can see shading better. Place the light a bit more. So I have this dramatic shadowing. So I've turned off a few of the lights here. So I can probably safely shade this part already. Starting here. Have a bit of there. With light shading, so I'm slanting my pencil. I have this broad area. Don't be tempted to entirely try to shade off your hair as dark, but just start it with slowly. Can shade this, get this volume going, but don't overdo it. So you start out from the lightest first. It's going to contrast there. There's shading, but the lighting is reflecting here because it's coming. My lighting is coming from this side. Then we start to shade the clothes. The neck is a bit more round, so there's a bit of shadow there. So this formulation is working out as you can see. So all I did was follow the formulation of the proportions that was set out here on what you can see on the left side. Of course, adjust accordingly to what you see rather than what you think. But the proportions of, plus other artists' formulation is a bit more complicated than this. So here I'm doing now the medium shadings. I have shadings. Of course, you don't overdo it because it's going to end up looking very darker than it should. So shading the shadowed areas where you can see. Now the best way to do that is to actually squint. You can see the shapes already. That you look at them as shapes in them at first. You know, where the midtones are, where these are, and then even the hair has a bit of a shape where the darkness are and where the lightness is. As you could see these types of shapes with the neck. So take a look at these shapes and then you start shading them. And if you want some contrast, you start also shading the background. After probably everything, you can start contrasting the background, but don't make it fully black. Now you can use a variety of pencil, like the darkest would be a 6B. And you can start out with, say, an HB for the line drawing or where things are. 3B would be a medium pencil. Now what I'm doing here is I'm shading this with random strokes. Gives you the cue for darkening where things are the darkest are. The entire hair, of course, is not totally black. Just because you have black hair does not mean that you entirely start shading everything black, but rather your hair would hit some light some places. And then once you kind of do all of this darkness here, it really gives you the contrast that you need in order for you to darken certain areas that you see fit. The dark part on your face is the last part that you implement, not from the beginning. Here, I'm starting out with a darker area, the shape of my face. Show the shape of my hair here on this part. So going back, it's important for us to keep this formulation here, the triangle, so that you have your ears as far apart as should. The height of your skull is determined from the same height of the triangle going here. That determines your skull. Another parallel line is supposed to be there. This is one eye apart, and for forming the next eye. And this becomes your placement for where the middle of your lips is. Of course, everything else is how you would shape it. I mean, what you would see. The shape of your jaw, the shape of this top of your skull, and the shape that you see here. Again, first principle, just put or draw what you see, not what you think. Everything else follows. Put in the values that you see by squinting your eye. I guess that ends this tutorial, and happy drawing.